Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm sorry for not being with you in person today. Strikes make the things quite challenging, or maybe instead of a strike, I could say the French government, that causally speaking maybe is before the strike, make the things quite challenging. But well, anyway, I'm still happy for being part of this workshop, which is super interesting, and I think you will see some parallel between what has been said before and what I will present now. And also, sorry, I'm not super well looking, but I'm trying to keep physically active too. And I'm playing rugby on Sunday, and I took a nice shot this past Sunday, so it's why I have some stuff here. So now we can talk about what I would like to discuss today. And my talk will focus on physical activity time series specifically. And we have discussed different things during this workshop. So how can behavioral science help digitalization to work a bit better? Here it's a bit like the other orientation. And to me, in the physical activity domain, this concept of time series is really the best contribution of the digitalization to this topic of physical activity promotion. So I will try to convince you about this. So at the end, we are interested in all these things for one specific outcome, which is changing physical activity. We have some participants that have a specific level of physical activity, and we want them to do more physical activity. The classical paradigm that we can see in the literature for years now, and which is still actual, is to take like snapshots of physical activity. So usually it's measured during 1 week in baseline, 3 months, 6 months, sometimes 1 year later. And it's what I will call here the low resolution paradigm, or the baseline 3-6 months paradigm. And we have a lot of figures like this in the literature showing how physical activity change between an intervention and a control group, with a relatively, I will say, static view on it, with again like some time points, like few time points over time. And these last years, we have seen more and more pictures like this one, which is a time series of physical activity, also from a randomized control trial, but just from one participant. And I think that these two pictures speak for themselves. And you can see that the view that we have on physical activity on the right is much more complex than the one on the left. And actually, I've been starting to work with this time series during my postdoc in San Diego some years ago now. And since I discovered, I will say, this continuous monitoring paradigm and this high resolution paradigm, I cannot do something else. And to me, it's where like most of the more important things in terms of physical activity prevention lies. And especially like accounting for this variability, for this dynamic, for this complexity. An analogy that I like about this low versus high resolution paradigm is simply taking a picture. And I will say that on the left, we have a very blurry picture of what is occurring. We have like a very basic view of the physical activity change process, while on the right, with the high resolution, we have something that looks like more like close to the reality. And I think it's very important as scientists, obviously, to describe processes that are close to the reality. And sometimes I think we are very far from the reality. So today I would like to discuss some of the risks that come from this low resolution baseline 3-6 months paradigm, and also on a more positive side, all the opportunities also that we can develop with the high resolution one. So in terms of the risk, the first concept that I would like to introduce today is the concept of sampling frequency. And I'm not sure that I've heard about this word yet in the workshop. And basically, sampling frequency is the number of observation by unit of time that you collect for a specific process. So let's take an example. Here in this time series picture that I show you, we have one observation every day for 250 days. So that's the sampling frequency. It's a relatively high level sampling frequency. It could be even like higher if, for example, we were looking at within day change in physical activity, and we could have like a number of steps every hour during 250 days, and it will be even like higher sampling frequency. Here, obviously, the sampling frequency is lower because we have only 4 observations in 6 months with varying time windows between time points, something which is very strange because we have like 1 month, then it's 3 months, then it's 6 months. So it seems a bit random. And my key message about sampling frequency is that it's not something that should be predefined by random standards. So we are used to do this, and I've been trained also to do this. So to take like a baseline measure and let's say a 3 months and let's say a 6 months, because we have some papers saying that after 6 months, we have some forms of maintenance. And we all do this. So because we all do this, we also do this. And my key message here is that to me, sampling frequency, especially in health psychology and behavioral medicine, we are not super good at this, really deserves to be thought and really deserves to be like anticipated when we design a project. So thinking about the time between measurement points and also the total time of data collection and all the different things that we can manipulate here. And something which is very important with all these digital technologies that, again, in the physical activity domain, activity monitors on smartphones now make like continuous monitoring or at least like higher resolution measurement much more easier than before. And I think it's really an opportunity that we should not miss. So collecting higher resolution and also like analyzing this data at higher resolution. So another risk. Oh, sorry. So keeping on the sampling frequency, it's an example, an empirical example from the literature about alcohol consumption. I am not aware of such an example in the physical activity domain, but I'm sure that it's the same result and it will be easy to demonstrate. So here you have an intervention for reducing alcohol consumption, and you have 2 arms: the control group in blue and the intervention group in red. And as you can see, the differences between the 2 groups are varying over time. And the conclusion of the author is that it's very arbitrary to look at the differences between the intervention and control group in baseline 6 months and 12 months, because actually over time, the differences are varying. So it's an obvious, I will say, empirical demonstration of what I was saying before. It can be risky to randomly take some snapshots when you have like some variable that can vary a lot, like most health behaviors and especially physical activity. And the second risk is a bit more straightforward, and it's what I was saying at the beginning. Since I discovered all this stuff about time series in the physical activity domain, and I have been doing stat and working with time series for some years now, I could not come back to another type of data, really, because to me, it does not mirror the reality at all. And I'm even like wondering myself if it's used to develop intervention, to test models, when we do not have good characterization of our main outcome, which is physical activity behavior change. So it's a bit tough, and I also applying this statement to my past research. But I really think that all the efforts invested in, again, developing models, developing intervention, they are quite useless if our main outcome is not characterized like in the most perfect way that we can, given our methods and the availability of statistical and data collection methods. And I think it's very important, especially for psychologists, because sometimes I will say that we are more excited by the process, the determinant of physical activity, than by the behavior in itself. And I think that we might forget at some point, we might maybe like invest more energy into the process and the determinant and a bit less about the outcome. While at the end, we are all doing this for one specific reason, which is changing a behavior. So it deserves to be like the top priority, I think, in terms of measurement and characterization. So now on a more positive side and in terms of opportunities, I want to give you like some of the things that did change for me when I started to work with time series. So it's very like a personal view on it. But again, since I'm working with physical activity time series, I've been thinking differently about a lot of different things, and I want to share it with you. So the first one is by looking at time series, I started progressively to think differently about key concepts. So Falco just introduced us to this concept of physical activity maintenance, and the paper he presented by Dom and himself is a great theoretical paper with all like the theories about maintenance and how it is like developed in the literature. But again, looking at hundreds of time series within intervention, etc., one question that I ask myself is, does physical activity maintenance like empirically exist? Are we able to observe it really in the literature? And I've been super struggle to find one picture of something that might looks like to a physical activity maintenance. So here it's from a quite old school trial because it's a 2012 or 2013 trial. And you can see a time series for one participant that was participating to a digital goal setting intervention for physical activity. And you can see that the number of steps is increasing. There is very low variability. That's quite strange. And then this person is maintaining a physical activity level over time. So to my knowledge, that's the best empirical demonstration of physical activity maintenance. But what I wanted to tell you is that most of the time we do not observe this trajectory and we do not observe this shape. And in my own data, I never observe something like this. And most of the time it's way more complex. Like here, for example, where you have like a positive trend, then a drop, and then a second positive trend. And even more chaotic, most of the time series about physical activity that I'm looking at, they look like this one. So like super messy and noisy signal. And like it's been very challenging for my colleagues and I to observe like any form of maintenance in physical activity data. So that was one of the examples. Another concept that we recently investigated with some of my colleagues, and especially Dario Barretta, who led this tutorial, is the concept of resilience. And actually, it's fun because in the psychological literature, there are a lot also of definition of resilience. And it's quite difficult sometimes to understand like the differences between this definition, etc. While if you look at resilience in physics or in ecology, where they are much more into like time series and measuring their outcome at high resolution, it's very clear. And there is one definition. The field is it's quite clear on this domain. And resilience is how the system, so here it's a person, it's a behavior, physical activity, but it could be an ecosystem, it could be anything, how the system after a perturbation bounce back to the normal. So it's really like resilience in this field comes with time series. You cannot speak about resilience if you are not collecting time series. So with this tutorial, we try to provide a method to compute a resilience score, which is on the left side. You can see different resilience process after the COVID-19 for different participants. And basically, the higher the yellow part, the less resilient are the participants. And again, I came to this concept because it's very related to time series. And I don't think that I would have been able to move forward with this concept of resilience without doing time series analysis. The second thing that changed a lot for me when I started to work with time series is to think about the physical and social context. So this is a very generic model, and I know that in health psychology we have, I would say, like a model that looks a bit better and that goes into the detail about motivation, etc. So this one, I will say, is not the most appealing one maybe for psychologists, but still there is this part here, opportunity, social and physical, which is all the environmental factors that influence our behaviors that are super important. I have in mind, I should have put it here in this paper, but I have in mind some papers looking at the association between motivation and physical activity, controlling for precipitation. And we all know that when it's raining, it's killing everything, and it's taking all the variance in the model. So that's an important factor, and it's quite an easy one to get. So here the point is that when you have time on the x-axis, when you are looking at how some things change over time, so physical activity level, I think that it's more easy to think about this physical and social change and how things change over time. So here I'm thinking about like the COVID-19 pandemic in California for the first time series. We can see a big drop, which is related to the stay-at-home measure. And just below, like there is an example for extreme weather event. And again, when you are observing a time series, because of this time axis here, I think it's, to me at least, it was an invitation to take into account the context a bit more than what I was doing before. So then again, it's something that that Falco discussed before. Doing time series also pushed me towards more hagiographic approaches, and for good, I think. So here the point is that when you are collecting a lot of data points per participant, so here, for example, this time series, it's 250 observations for one participant, you can actually do statistics at the level of one individual. So I can do statistics just for one participant. And this obviously like helps you to understand like heterogeneity during an intervention or anything in a very, very granular way. So I can show you an empirical example. This is a picture from a paper we published in Health Psychology some years ago now. And it was about a digital intervention for promoting physical activity and based on goal setting. And we were manipulating goal difficulty during this intervention. And we were observing the effect of manipulating goal difficulty on the level of steps. And here, it's it's obvious when you look at the plot. You can see that for one participant, the manipulation is working very well. So when we are setting like difficult goal to this participant is increasing his or her physical activity level. While for this participant, that looks like in terms of baseline steps, they are relatively similar. There is no effect of this manipulation. So this participant wasn't sensitive to the intervention. And again, this heterogeneity is something you can do in a low resolution paradigm by running like moderation analysis, etc. But I think that it's less powerful, obviously, than conducting like purely hagiographic research and looking at the individual level, like how an intervention impact different participants. Different participants. Something also that I discovered with the time series analysis is the exploration of time varying association. So here it's part of the same study. You have the association between goal difficulty and goal achievement over time. So the cycles is approximately 2 weeks every two. I don't know why actually we choose like this cycle, but basically here you have 2 weeks of data, cycle 2, 2 weeks, cycle 3, 2 weeks, etc. And we can see the relationships between goal achievement. So when we set a physical activity goal to someone, is this person achieving this goal? And goal difficulty. And you can see that at the beginning of the study for this person, we have no relationships between the two, meaning that even for difficult goal, this person is achieving the goal. Like this person is adapting himself, herself to the difficult goal. And we can see that over time, there is a drop. And when there is very difficult goal, the person is not meeting the goals anymore. And basically, like this person is like responding less to the goal setting manipulation over time. And I think it's very interesting, again, to look at this type of association at high resolution using time series. So like I can take an example, maybe it exists in the literature, I don't know, but we could do the same for physical activity and different motivational factors. And we might observe that there are strong association between, I don't know, attitudes and physical activity at the beginning of an intervention, while over time, this association will disappear. And maybe the association between identity and physical activity will start being significant. So it's the type of question you can answer with time varying association. now that I'm more and more working about the impact of climate change on physical activity, a question that I'm trying to explore now with this time varying association is the question of adaptation. So, for example, I have one of my PhD students who is looking at the impact of heat, and especially extreme heat, on physical activity and sleep over a summer. And we are looking at how heat impact the behaviors differentially at the beginning or at the end of the summer, with the hypothesis that maybe there are some forms of adaptation and you have like a smaller association between heat and physical activity at the end of the summer compared to the beginning. So again, just to give you another example. So I think that, again, Falco discussed this already just before, but thinking at high resolution and using time series is also an opportunity to think about dynamic and adaptive intervention. Because if you look at what does exist in the literature, so for example, the just-in-time adaptive intervention or the type of intervention that comes from engineering, so like control system engineering, like based intervention, they are all using as a key principles continuous monitoring in their design, meaning that they are always adapting the intervention over time based on the signals in terms of physical activity and how a specific participant is changing his behavior. So again, I think that if we want to move towards this more like dynamic and adaptive intervention, we need to have like a continuous monitoring. And actually, that's not a novel idea, because if you look at any type of practitioners, of clinicians, it's what they are doing. Like they are monitoring a specific outcome over time, and they are trying to give advices to their client or to their patient based on what they are observing. So in the e-health domain, I think that's the same issue. It's like accumulating the data over time and creating interventions that are like close to the data collection and that are reactive to the data collection. And actually, in terms of e-health intervention, I'm not super techno-solutionist, and I don't really believe into e-health for interventional purpose. So I think it's a great tool to collect data and to improve our understanding of a lot of things. I'm not sure it's a great tool to intervene, but something which looks like key in my experience is combining this continuous monitoring with in like personal feedback that can be delivered actually just online also, but like involving a human with this continuous monitoring. And I've seen a lot of very successful projects that were basically cleaning a bit the data, the time series for physical activity or different behavior. I have one intervention right now about diet here, where basically we are collecting diet with measurement burst over time. And our aim is to make these signals relatively easy to understand for a nutritionist to use it then in the intervention. So I think that also continuous monitoring together with like traditional practitioners' activities or health promoters is a very good combo. Something also that I discovered shifting to time series is the concept of, I would say, real prediction. So really trying to anticipate what will happen. And there are different ways of doing it. In the time series domain, you have a lot of methods for forecasting. So meaning that when you are looking at a system over time, you have methods to try to anticipate how the system will evolve in the future. I'm not doing this too much, but I've been working on this concept of early warning signals, which is, I will say, like a relatively old-fashioned concept in the domain of complexity science. It's a paper from 2009 in Nature that speaks about this. And the idea is that when you are looking at a system, so like a human could be a system, before the system will reorganize himself, so before you will observe like a shift in the system, a change in the behavior, you will have some critical fluctuation in the time series that can be an early warning signal telling you that something will happen. And very quickly, because it's a bit complex to explain, but we apply these methods to physical activity time series, and we observe the significant association between this critical fluctuation and significant losses. So here it's the orange triangles that you can see in the pictures. And each time you see an orange triangles, it's a loss of 20% of steps during at least 1 week. 20% based on the median level of steps for this person. And in this paper, we observe that there is actually some signals. There are signals in the time series for anticipating this loss in physical activity when you look at it again at high resolution. And I will finish with this. 7 is a good number, maybe. The last things was influential to me with all this time series and dynamic stuff is, again, Falco discussed this before, it's how we think about time in our models. And there are 2 great papers on this. One is from the management domain on the left, and the other one, it's more like talking to health psychologists from Urta on the right. And here the question is really to think about all the temporal questions that we are not addressing in our classical model. So here I'm just giving some example. Is physical activity and its motivational determinant changing on the same temporal scale? I think we have like implicit knowledge about this. So for example, in my mind, identity is something which is like a slow evolving process that will develop over time, while maybe self-efficacy or an attitude can be manipulated in a shorter time space. But we have very few empirical data on this, and we have also very few like theoretical like examination, or we have very few like theoretical paper talking about these different things. And I think it will help quite a lot our field to go a step forward in the way we think about our different concepts, determinant, and all these different things are occurring together. And here there is a tool which is great for this, and you can find some articles in the literature available, which is computational modeling, which is basically the formalization of a model, but in mathematical terms. And when you do this in mathematical terms, so for example, using differential equation, you need to have hypothesis about time. So you need to say, for example, I expect this output, let's say self-efficacy, to increase in this time frame, and I expect the effect to be on physical activity in this time frame, etc. It's really something which is part of the model, so it forced you to think about time. So as a conclusion, and again, it's based on my own experience, just having to work with time series and looking at physical activity time series for some years now. I think, as I told you, it really helped me to revisit some key concepts. Maintenance is a very important one, I think, and we have some research coming on this topic. It helped me also understand and take into account a bit more like the contextual information. So what is the impact of the environment on my studies? To conduct geographic research, because when you shift from a low to high resolution paradigm, you have a lot of data points per participant. So you can do statistics at the individual level. Sometimes it's not relevant because it's not heterogeneous, but sometimes it is very relevant. Also to develop like hypothesis of time varying association. So I told you about this question around adaptation that interests me right now. The design of adaptive intervention, because obviously when you are collecting data over time, you want to use this data to tune your intervention according to what you are observing. And again, it's an old idea because all clinicians are doing that all the time. So now the aim is to facilitate, I will say, this process. All these things around real prediction and early warning signals and forecasting that are, I think, very, very interesting too, and very innovative. And I'm not working directly like in this field, but I think that our theories will benefit a lot from like more precise hypothesis about time. So just as a conclusion, and again, it's in my opinion, continuous monitoring, so true activity monitors for physical activity, is really the most interesting part of digitalization in the domain of physical activity promotion. Again, I do not believe that we will totally change physical activity promotion just by developing application and by putting like digital tools everywhere. But I really think that this contribution of continuous monitoring is key in this process. There is one limitation, and I've seen a question about this morning in the chat, is that so far all these devices are very good for continuous monitoring for steps, but they are not good for accounting for different intensity. So for example, they are not super precise to tell you like how many minutes per day you spend doing moderate to vigorous physical activity. So it's a limitation, because when you think about physical activity, we might have different complexity, different time series, if we were looking at a number of steps or a number of minutes being like in a light or moderate or intense physical activity. But also, I'm not super techno-solutionist. I think that they are improving their algorithm, and maybe in some years we will have like devices that are more able to detect intensity. And then I would like to thank two of my colleagues that are like my fuel, I will say, for all these ideas. So Olga Persky, which is in San Diego, and we wrote this article, Innovative Methods for Observing and Changing Complex Health Behaviors with Olga, where you can find a summary of what I've said in this talk, in a sense. And also Dario Barretta, who is doing some magic with time series in terms of statistics, etc. And both they are coming with great outcome. So Dario, for example, is working on this concept of maintenance right now, and I think he will publish some very interesting papers in the next month. And Olga is working on this question of computational modeling, especially for smoking, a bit less for physical activity. But both are really doing like innovative things. So I encourage you to follow these two guys. And I'm done. Thank you.
Cheers, Guillaume. Many thanks for your talk. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Guillaume, for your provocative talk. You were saying in the beginning of your intervention that you were questioning the usefulness of low-resolution studies. And I'm not sure we have to oppose low-resolution and high-resolution studies. And I think that they answer different questions, just. For example, high-resolution studies are very relevant to identify critical transitions or to examine inter-individual heterogeneity. And low-resolution studies are maybe more relevant to examine long-term maintenance of physical activity or to examine what happens at the level of the population on average. What do you think?
Yeah, I respectfully disagree, Aina. No, I think that I'm working in a place now where we have almost only epidemiologists. So when I'm talking about these things, I'm not on the same planet. And I think that for epidemiological studies, having snapshots or low resolution things are interesting. So for example, if you want to look at the association between average physical activity in a population and I don't know, average health status, for sure, the low resolution paradigm is good. When we want to study change, so physical activity, behavior change, seriously, my honest opinion on it is that we cannot work on physical activity, behavior change without actually looking at this change. And because it seems that physical activity is varying a lot in very short time scale, and it's very complex and very noisy, I think that the only solution is to collect time series. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my opinion. Let's say.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay for change, but if you look at maintenance, because for example, you showed us a noisy signal to illustrate that maintenance is maybe not may not exist or is not empirically examined possible. But if you look at your noisy signal, if you look at the average, the mean, then you see that there is maintenance on even on your noisy signal.
We are conducting research on this, so especially it's Dario who is leading this, and so there are different methods. So for example, recursive partitioning is one method to say, okay, we want to detect period of time when there is an increase of, let's say, 20% of physical activity during at least, let's say, 3 months, even not 6 months. And we cannot detect it, that does not exist because there is too much variability. So sometime for some participants, you can see a real developmental process and you can see something that looks like maintenance, as I showed you in my talk before. But for the data that I had play with for now, most of the time it's too noisy. And you have period where things are increasing, then you have a drop, then it's increasing again. Sometimes you have a positive trend, but then you have a drop, and then you have a lot of variability. So it's very, very difficult to empirically observe physical activity maintenance. And I think I will have to come back in some month when Dario will be done with the analysis to show you a bit, what we can see empirically from this data. And we are compiling different time series right now from very different contexts. And seriously, we have a lot of difficulties observing something that looks like maintenance.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious to see that.
Sorry,
I'm curious to see that when it will come out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Will share it, don't worry.
Okay, other comments, questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Actually, the difference between the high and low resolution was quite interesting. And I was wondering if when you want to do continuous monitoring, wouldn't there be two types of behavior change if the participants didn't wear Fitbits before? You want them to increase their physical activity and to wear this kind of device for 3, 6, and 12 months?
Sorry, I'm not sure to understand. Are you asking about the effect of giving a device to the participant?
Not the effect, but maybe you have also to change the habits of the participants to not that then they didn't wear this kind of device before, and now they have to wear it every day for 12 months.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a challenge, for sure. I think it's way more easy to wear this type of devices compared to the old school research grad accelerometer. I've been working with both, and when you have a big red watch that that cannot give you the time, that's quite struggling to ask the participant to wear it. So now with a small Fitbit, it's more easy. My experience is that with physical activity, we can get relatively good wear time. It's more challenging for sleep. So at night, we have a lot of participants complaining from wearing these devices. So it's an issue for sleep. But my experience so far with physical activity is pretty good. It's pretty good. But yeah, for sure, it's a challenge. And sometimes you have a lot of long wear time.
Do you have any experience with special population like individuals with chronic disease?
Yes, because most of the studies that I've been talking were on participants with respiratory or metabolic issues. So yes, I had a lot of difficulties this summer implementing a study in migrant workers. So we tried to recruit migrant workers working around Barcelona in the field of agriculture. And the digital literacy was very low. And that was very, very challenging to, I think half of the sample did not wear consistently the device. So it's quite a lot.
Okay.
So, always the same for sure. There are some population where it's a challenge to get good data.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Guillaume. Thank you for this talk. You and some previous researcher mentioned Fitbit as a physical activity tracker. My question was, how do you get the data that is a Is it the ownership of Fitbit, or do you have access publicly through an API or whatever?
Yes. Now I am not working with Fitbit anymore. I'm more working with WeSings. In the US, when I was working with Fitbit, we were using an API called FITA-based, and it's something which is made for research protocol and that help you to have access to the participant data very easily. You can download everything, etc., with an interface like that. Was super convenient. That's quite a shame, but for WeSings, it does not exist right now. So there are some APIs that are more open source that you can run on R, but my experience is that it's not working very well. And otherwise, you can pay some developer to create an API for yourself. I don't think that it's too expensive, but I haven't made it so far. And the last option is only working for small protocol. You can always get the data by creating the account yourself. So for example, you create an account with a false email address and you give the device to a participant. And when you have I don't know, 50, 60 participants to manage, it's still doable. And you have to log each time you want to check for one participant. So the best thing to have API, but I think that most of them are proposing it right now. But yeah, it's not always easy.
And so why did you choose Withing then?
Actually, it's a French company, and when I came back from the US, I tried to establish some contact with them, and I was interested in both buying some devices and also buying some data or having access to some data. I haven't been able to have access to the data, but I've been able to buy devices, obviously. So no, that was quite random. I'm not sure I would keep working with them in the next project.
Yeah, actually, I'm asking the question because 5 to 6 years ago, I've been negotiating with them to get some data and was even enrolled in a contest that they had done. But I really quickly understood that they will never give me any data. So they agreed that I work with their devices, but they don't want to give the data. So this is the reason why I was asking.
Yeah, it's very difficult to have access to the data. I have one of my colleagues in the sleep domain, but that's the same, that get access to millions of data from, I think it was Samsung devices, maybe something like that. But it takes time, to build confidence, and it's quite random. You met someone that can facilitate the process. It's quite random. I have a meeting actually with someone from Garmin in some weeks to see if we can have access to some data. We can pay it, or we will see.
Thank you.
Maybe we should have a look if we have online questions.
We don't have online question, but I have one.
Okay, Clément, please.
Hi, Guillaume. It's Clément Gino. I have one question about that. At the beginning of the presentation, you said, okay, we do that, the low resolution method, because we learned that by our supervisors, and our supervisors learned that by their supervisors, etc., etc. So now there is a challenge if you want to spread this method, the high resolution, as you called it. And I know you have a lot of concern about climate change, about open science, and about methodology. So how can we learn to our students about this kind of methodologies with these three constraints? Because, for example, here at SENS, okay, that's great, that's very sexy, but how I do that? I don't know how, and I will need a lot of time to learn how to do this kind of statistics, which watches I should wear, etc., etc. What do you recommend for the future to spread the message?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Clément. I think you are both right and false here, because you are right because for sure there are some statistical techniques for time series that hurts a bit the first time, and you need to spend time training yourself in doing this for sure. But now there are more and more tutorials. I have a lot of open access code. Like all my studies come from open access code. Dario is also releasing like tutorial, etc. So it's getting more and more easy, I think, to implement with R. And you are also false, I will say, because actually when you look at a time series, just plotting a time series, it's not that difficult. And it can tell you a story directly, you know, like without performing any statistic. Just looking at a time series can tell you a lot about what is happening. So I think that for students, it's very relevant, because if you think about tracking, even just with self-report or with a smartphone, no, with like free app, you can collect some data. And you know, it's something I'm not teaching that much this last month, but it's something I would like to do. For example, if I was teaching this method, I would ask the student to run some form of self-experimentation, so collecting data on themselves during like 1 month, like the time of your course, if you can. And just, you know, plotting the time series, even on Excel, you know, like if you don't want to jump on R, but you have API, I think, online that exists also to plot time series. And to look at this concept of variability, you know, am I stable? Am I very like dynamic in the process? Is this an increasing trend, decreasing trend? It's all the things that you can observe by looking at a time series without actually doing any forms of statistics. So, and actually, if you look into the N of 1 domain, so all the literature in N of 1 trials, this has been done for clinicians, and it's quite simple most of the time to see the effect of an intervention looking at a time series, and again without running any statistics, just by looking at it. So I guess it depends on the objective. It can be more complex, yes, and you need to update a bit your, you know, like methodological skills, but it can also sometimes be very, very simple.